newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
With the news at this time, I am Deanna Jordan. A very good morning to you. The news comes to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories. To begin the news, here's a look at the leads. Thousands of Guyanese will no longer have to pay income tax as part of a package of measures to ease the impact of rising cost of living. The opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, has to decide who will replace Mr. Joseph Harmon as opposition leader. Regionally, Barbadian police are yet to be paid $10 million in allowances 11 years after Parliament had approved the money. And on the international scene, 6 young Japanese are suing the operator of the Fukushima nuclear plant after developing thyroid cancer in the years following the 2011 nuclear disaster. The details of these and other stories will be coming up right here in just a moment.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner, with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now the news in detail. Guyanese who earn $75,000 per month or less will no longer have to pay income tax. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh made the announcement in his 2022 National Budget speech.
Mr. Speaker, along with all of the other measures proposed to increase disposable incomes, our government would also like to provide additional relief to taxpayers. In this regard, we are proposing to increase the monthly income tax threshold from $65,000 to $75,000 monthly. This releases immediately, sir, into the hands of current taxpayers a total of $1.3 billion of additional disposable income.
He says that the increased revenue from personal income tax of $8.2 billion was driven by higher remittances by employers in both the public and private sectors. The Guyana government yesterday announced several measures, including the cutting out of middlemen to reduce the cost of living. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh says evidence shows that the cost of basic items are cheaper at farms. He says the prices increase at existing markets because of transportation, handling, and reselling. In his 2022 budget speech, he said that special markets would be held across the coast.
In the interest of reducing inefficiencies in this process, we will be arranging monthly farmers' markets at locations to be specified in East Berbice, East Coast Demerara, Georgetown, East Bank Demerara, and West Coast Demerara in the first instance, with the possibility of extending to other locations depending on the initial experience. Mr. Speaker, this will help our farmers to find ready markets for their produce, and it will help consumers to benefit from the price advantage of buying directly from the farmer.
In the area of fuel, Dr. Singh says the government will immediately be lowering the excise tax rate further on gasoline and diesel from 20% to 10%. The finance minister also announced that billions of dollars would be provided to assist most needed communities after discussions are held.
Mr. Speaker, given the complexity of the factors driving price increases and the limited policy instruments available to mitigate these increases, We intend to engage in further consultations with the communities most affected, both on the coast and in the hinterland, on possible interventions to help ease the impact on the most vulnerable in society. To this end, sir, and in order to meet the cost of the interventions to be implemented after we would have conducted these consultations, Budget 2022 allocates a sum of $5 billion to address this question of cost of living.
The finance minister says that also in an effort to reduce the cost of living, the government will extend the reduction of the freight cost component in the CIF value that is used for calculating import taxes, rolling back freight costs to pre-pandemic levels. Dr. Singh says this has contributed to the reduction of import duties, excise taxes, and VAT charged on imported items. He says this measure was initially due to expire on the 31st of January 2021, but will now be extended to this year-end. The finance minister says this measure is expected to cost in the order of $6 billion in 2022. 83,000 Guyanese who receive public assistance and old age pension will now get more money. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh says public assistance will be increased from $12,000 to $14,000. 18,000 persons are expected to benefit from this year's increase, which will amount to $432 million. Dr. Singh says old age pension will be increased from $25,000 to $28,000. This, he says, will amount to $2.3 billion of additional disposable income. The old age pension was previously increased from $20,500 to $25,000 monthly just last year. The uniform allowance and the Because We Care cash grant for the more than 200,000 children across Guyana will this year be increased. Finance Minister Dr. Ashni Singh says that the yearly uniform grant to the parents of each school-age child will this year be increased from $4,000 to $5,000 per child. He also says that the Because We Care cash grants to children in the public and private schools will increase from $15,000 to $25,000 per child. The finance minister says this will place an additional amount of $2 billion in the homes of the same 200,150 children attending both public and private schools. Mr. Joseph Harmon has resigned as opposition leader, but that constitutional position is yet to be filled. The People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, of which Mr. Harmon is a member, says that it will address the issue of filling the position of leader of the opposition with its coalition partners in the shortest possible time. House Speaker Mansour Nadir says that APNU plus AFC Chief Whip Christopher Jones has informed him that they will say when they are available to meet for the election of a new opposition leader. Mr. Nadir says that at 11 hours 40 Wednesday morning, he received Mr. Harmon's letter of resignation. His resignation on Wednesday followed his demitting office as General Secretary of APNU. While Mr. David Granger has resigned as APNU chairman, he remains the representative of the list of candidates. People's National Congress Reform, PNCR leader Aubrey Norton was Tuesday elected as APNU chairman. Earlier Wednesday, APNU parliamentarian Roysdale Ford, who had performed the functions of opposition leader in the absence of Mr. Harmon, said he was not aware of any move for him to eventually take over that constitutional office. The majority of opposition parliamentarians would have to vote for the new nominee. Mr. Norton had said that his party's Central Executive Committee had decided that he should emerge as the new opposition leader and representative of the list. A Jamaican man is in custody after he was allegedly caught on a half-acre marijuana farm at Nabacalist East Coast, Demerara. The Customs Anti-Narcotics Unit, CANU, said that during the operation on Tuesday, a shotgun, several types of ammunition, a crossbow, and several arrows were also seized at the location. He has been identified as 46-year-old Winston Thompson. CANU said its agents found about 5,000 cannabis plants and seedlings, processed cannabis, and 1 kilogram of mixed seeds. The anti-drug agency said it continues to conduct their operations around the country aimed at dismantling the networks that are engaged in the cultivation, sale, as well as distribution of narcotics. And over now to regional news. 11 years after former Attorney General Adriel Braffett signed an order approving the payment of various allowances for members of the Barbados Police Service, BPS, the money has still not yet been granted. Barbados Today reports that more than $10 million was provided for in the 2010 to 2011 budget. It included payment for detectives, plainclothes officers, washing, travel, flexible responsibility, subsistence, duty allowance, and special operations. When contacted, President of the Barbados Police Association, BPA, Mervyn Grace, said he was aware of the long outstanding payments for the allowances, which had been approved in 2010. He said he was taking steps to have the situation settled. Residents in Antigua and Barbuda who are afflicted with non-communicable diseases, NCDs, are being encouraged to make lifestyle changes to help combat the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their health. The call was issued by Non-Communicable Disease NCD Coordinator in the Health Ministry, Nurse Valerie Williams. NCDs such as heart disease, cancer, diabetes claim the lives of millions of people each year, accounting for a significant percentage of all deaths globally, and international reports are that those figures have increased since the start of the pandemic. Nurse Williams is encouraging Antiguans and Barbudans to walk, play sport, get good sleep, and drink a lot of water instead of sweetened drinks. And now for the international news. Here's the latest bulletin coming from the BBC World Service.
Hello, I'm Debbie Russ with the BBC News. A group of young Japanese people who say they developed thyroid cancer after being exposed to radiation from the meltdown of the Fukushima nuclear plant are suing its operators. The 6 were living in Fukushima in 2011 when a tsunami caused the disaster. They're seeking nearly $5.5 million from the Tokyo Electric Power Company. From the Japanese capital, here's Rupert Wingfield-Hayes.
People are talking about between 50 and 100 years to completely clean up the site, and a bill between 100 billion and 500 billion US dollars. So it is a massive long-term task, and that's part of the anger around this lawsuit and why people are pursuing Tokyo Electric Power, because they made lots of mistakes. They weren't honest in accounting for what went on afterwards. And now, actually, it's the Japanese taxpayer that's picking up that bill to clear up their mess.
The European Union is taking China to the World Trade Organization over Beijing's decision to ban imports from one of the EU's smallest states, Lithuania. China responded by saying its argument with Lithuania was political, not economic. Michael Bristow has more details.
Although it's made no official announcement, Beijing has dramatically reduced its trade with Lithuania. Imports to China were down a staggering 90% in December compared with the year earlier. Beijing is also encouraging multinational companies to cut economic ties with Lithuania or be punished. This is all because Lithuania allowed Taiwan to open an office in Vilnius under the island's own name. China considers Taiwan its own territory and reacts angrily to anyone who treats the island as an independent country. This row is testing the EU's willingness to defend one of its own members against Chinese pressure.
The army in Jordan says it's killed 27 drug smugglers attempting to cross into the country from Syria. Mike Thompson reports.
The Jordanian army says the traffickers were supported by an armed group as they tried to enter the country at dawn. Its forces killed 27 of them and wounded several more in clashes, while others managed to flee back into Syria. There's no word of any Jordanian casualties. After a search of the area, a large quantity of amphetamines was found, which the group had been trying to smuggle into Jordan. The authorities in Jordan report a big increase in drug smuggling from Syria recently. Earlier this month, a Jordanian army officer was killed and 3 soldiers wounded in a clash with drug smugglers on the Syrian border.
The president of Malawi, Lazarus Chakwera, has declared parts of the country disaster areas after 19 people died in floods caused by Tropical Storm Ana. The worst-hit places are in the south, where more than 40 camps have been set up to help thousands of displaced people. You're listening to the World News from the BBC. China has urged all sides to avoid inflaming tension over Ukraine, which has tens of thousands of Russian troops massed on its border. The Foreign Minister, Wang Yi, said Russia's security concerns should be taken seriously. He made the remarks during a phone call to the US Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Washington and its NATO allies suspect Russia is preparing to invade Ukraine, which Moscow has repeatedly denied. Police in Ukraine have arrested a member of the National Guard accused of opening fire on his colleagues, killing 5 people. The 20-year-old conscript was detained after a brief manhunt. The motive for the shooting at an aerospace factory in the eastern city of Dnipro is unclear. James Waterhouse reports from Kiev.
Unverified CCTV footage shows the man, named by police as Artemy Rybachuk, getting his weapon out of a locker with colleagues before loading it and opening fire. He's suspected of shooting dead 4 servicemen as well as a woman. Armed officers have now cordoned off the Yuzmash Privdeni machine building plant where it happened. You can see bullet holes on some windows. The gunman escaped with an AK-47 assault rifle before police captured him uninjured.
A British government minister has insisted that the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, did not personally authorise the evacuation of animals from Afghanistan during the Taliban takeover last year. Therese Coffey said it was the British Defence Minister who took individual decisions about evacuations. Leaked emails appear to indicate that the Prime Minister authorised the evacuation when many people were unable to leave Kabul. One of Japan's most popular snacks is increasing in price for the first time in its 42-year history. Writing on Twitter, the makers of the corn puff snack called Umaibo confirmed that it would now cost 12 yen instead of 10. That's a rise equivalent to less than 2 US cents. BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Eureka Labs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now to end the news, here is a recap of the leads. Thousands of Guyanese will no longer have to pay income tax as part of a package of measures to ease the impact of rising cost of living. The opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, has to decide who will replace Mr. Joseph Harmon as opposition leader. Regionally, Barbadian police are yet to be paid $10 million in allowances 11 years after Parliament had approved the money. And on the international scene, 6 young Japanese people are suing the operator of the Fukushima nuclear plant after developing thyroid cancer in the years following the 2011 nuclear disaster. And that's the end of the news.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.